Life is a collection of moments. Some are quiet and small, like a shared cup of tea. Others are loud and earth-shaking, moments that arrive without warning and change everything. On June 12, 2025, such a moment fell from the sky over Ahmedabad. A giant metal bird, an Air India Boeing 787, tumbled from the clouds, carrying 242 souls. It crashed in a storm of fire and smoke, a heartbreaking end to a journey that had barely begun. When the smoke began to clear and the sirens wailed, everyone believed the story was over. It was a story of complete loss, a tragedy with no silver lining, but sometimes a story has a chapter we did not expect. In the middle of the wreckage, where hope had been extinguished, something impossible happened. A man was found alive. His name was Vishwas Kumar Ramesh. He was pulled from the chaos by local residents who ran toward the danger, not away from it. He was breathing, he was conscious, he was the only one. Out of 242 people on that flight, only one person continued their story. The world stopped and stared. How could this be? How could one person walk away from a disaster that claimed everyone else? This is where the story truly begins. It is not just a story about a plane crash. It is a story about the questions that follow. Questions about luck and fate and the invisible lines that connect us all. Vishwas Kumar became more than just a man. He became a symbol. He was the living, breathing embodiment of a miracle, a puzzle that no one could quite solve. He was the man who fell from the sky and lived to tell the tale, even if he couldn't remember how. His survival forced an entire nation, and then the world, to look up and wonder. For every person who heard the news, the same thought echoed in their minds. Why him? What made him different? Was it where he was sitting? Was it something he did? Or was it something else entirely? Something beyond our simple explanations? In a world that loves answers, Vishwas Kumar's survival offered none. Instead, it presented a profound mystery. He was a whisper of hope in a shout of grief. His unbelievable escape reminds us that sometimes the most important stories are the ones that leave us with more questions than answers, forcing us to consider the powerful, unseen forces that shape our lives. The news spread like wildfire, first through the streets of Ahmedabad, then across the television screens and social media feeds of India, and finally around the globe. A plane had crashed. This news is always tragic, always heartbreaking. But the details that followed painted a picture of unfathomable horror. The flight had just taken off. It came down in a residential area, crashing into a medical college hostel. The loss was immense, both in the sky and on the ground. The city of Ahmedabad was cloaked in a heavy blanket of grief, the air thick with sorrow and the constant sound of sirens. Everywhere you looked, people were asking the same questions. Was my family member on that flight? Do you know anyone who was? The airport became a center of anguish, a place where families waited for news they prayed would never come. But the news was grim. The crash was so devastating that identifying the victims was nearly impossible without DNA. It was a national tragedy, a wound felt in every corner of the country. People gathered in homes, in temples, in mosques, and in churches. They lit candles and said prayers for the souls that were lost, united in a shared moment of mourning. Then a single piece of information cut through the darkness. One person survived, just one. This news did not lessen the grief, but it changed its shape. Suddenly there was a focal point for the world's bewilderment and wonder. Who was this person? How was it possible? The story shifted from one of pure tragedy to one of profound mystery. The name Vishwas Kumar Ramesh started to be whispered, then spoken, then shouted from the headlines. He was no longer just a man, he was a phenomenon. His survival was a single, flickering candle in an ocean of darkness. The story captivated everyone because it spoke to our deepest fears and our most profound hopes. It made the randomness of life feel both terrifying and magical. If one person could survive something so catastrophic, what did that mean for the rest of us? The phrase, "If God saves you, no one can kill you," began trending online. People saw divine intervention, a message from above. The crash had shaken the nation's sense of safety, but the survival of one man gave them something to hold on to, a reason to believe in the impossible, even when surrounded by the unbearable. Who was the man at the center of this miracle? Vishwas Kumar Ramesh was 39 years old. He was a British Indian citizen who had built a life in London over the past 2 decades. He had a wife and a child waiting for him back home. He was in India for a reason so many of us understand, to visit family. It was a trip filled with familiar sights, sounds, and the warmth of reconnecting with loved ones. When he boarded the flight to London, he was just a man heading home, his heart full of memories from his visit. He found his seat, 11A, a window seat next to an emergency exit. He settled in, perhaps thinking about his family in London, or maybe reflecting on the time spent with his relatives in India. The plane was full of people just like him, people heading to new jobs, or going on vacation, or returning home after a long trip. There were 230 passengers and 12 crew members, each with their own story, their own dreams, their own destination. For 241 of them, the journey would end just moments after it began. But for the man in seat 11A, something different was written in the stars. That small, ordinary seat would become the most famous seat in the world. The location of seat 11A would later be analysed by experts from around the globe. It was positioned right next to an emergency exit. This was a critical detail, a key piece of the puzzle. Did this location give him a chance that others did not have? Did the window offer an escape route from the inferno? It seems plausible, even likely, but it doesn't explain everything. Many people sit in exit rows on flights every single day. The crew, who are trained for these exact scenarios, were also near exits, yet none of them survived. Seat 11A was part of the answer, but it wasn't the whole story. The seat became a symbol. For some, it was a symbol of incredible luck, a random twist of fate that placed him in the one spot where survival was possible. For others, it was a sign of destiny, a pre-written plan that put him exactly where he needed to be. Seat 11A was no longer just a number and a letter. It was a testament to the fragile line between life and death. It reminds us that sometimes the biggest moments in our lives hinge on the smallest details, like the simple act of being assigned a seat on an airplane. The flight was meant to last for hours, crossing continents to reach London. Instead, it lasted for less than a minute. For 59 seconds, the giant Boeing 787 climbed into the sky. For the passengers on board, these were likely ordinary moments. The gentle rumble of the takeoff, the feeling of being pushed back into their seats, the city lights shrinking below. Vishwas Kumar remembers the first 30 seconds feeling normal. He was looking out of his window, 11A, watching the world fall away. Then suddenly everything changed. A loud blast shattered the calm. The plane shuddered violently. The comforting ascent turned into a terrifying, uncontrolled fall. This is the part of the story that Vishwas remembers. He remembers the feeling of falling. It is a primal fear, the kind of nightmare that jolts you awake in the middle of the night, but for him it was real. The cabin, once a place of order, would have become a scene of chaos and panic. The force of the descent, the screams, the certainty that something was terribly wrong. It is a horror that is difficult for any of us to truly imagine. He doesn't remember the impact. His memory goes dark. The next thing he knew, he was on the ground, surrounded by flames and wreckage. He regained consciousness in a world that no longer made sense. He saw bodies around him. The sight must have been unbearable, a vision from hell itself. He has no memory of how he got out of the plane. Did he unbuckle his seatbelt? Did he crawl through a hole in the fuselage? Did the impact throw him clear of the main wreckage? These are questions that he cannot answer. His mind has protected him from the most traumatic moments. The people who found him were residents from the neighborhood. They were the first responders, ordinary citizens who became heroes. They saw the falling plane and ran towards it, not knowing what they would find. They pulled him from the debris, a living soul amidst the devastation. They got him into a vehicle and rushed him to the hospital. Vishwas doesn't remember this either. He has a vague memory of being in an ambulance, but the details are lost. His journey from the sky to the ground and from the wreckage to safety is a blank page in his memory, a story told only by the miracle of his survival. In the sterile quiet of his hospital room, Vishwas Kumar began to piece together the world. He was alive. He had injuries, but they were minor. Just cuts and bruises on his chest, leg, and near his eye. Doctors told him he was out of danger. But as the fog of confusion started to lift, one single, urgent thought just took over his mind. Where was his brother? His brother, Ajay Kumar Ramesh, had been on the same flight. They were traveling together, returning from their family visit. But they weren't sitting together. Ajay was somewhere else on that plane, in a different row, in a different seat. This is the cruel twist in Vishwas's miraculous story. He survived, but he survived alone. As the world celebrated his impossible escape, he was consumed by a desperate search. From his hospital bed, his first questions weren't about himself, but about Ajay. "Have you found my brother?" He would ask anyone who would listen, doctors, nurses, family members on the phone. The joy of his own survival was immediately overshadowed by the crushing weight of his brother's unknown fate. It's a burden that's really hard to comprehend, to be the one who lived while the one you love is lost. His family in London felt this strange mix of emotions too. They released a statement to the media. They were overjoyed and relieved that Vishwas was alive, calling his survival a true miracle. But their joy was incomplete. They were also searching for Ajay. They were caught between celebrating a life saved and mourning a life that was likely lost. It's a strange and difficult place to be, a space between gratitude and grief. The miracle of one son's survival was intertwined with the tragedy of the other's disappearance. For Vishwas, this is the heaviest part of his story. Survival comes with a question that will follow him for the rest of his life. Why me and not him? Survivor's guilt is a well-known phenomenon, a deep and painful feeling that can haunt those who live through a tragedy that others do not. He didn't just lose 240 strangers. He lost his brother. His personal miracle is forever tied to his personal loss. As he recovers from his physical injuries, he must begin the long and difficult journey of healing from a wound that no one can see. As the world grappled with the story of Vishwas Kumar, the experts began to analyze it. They wanted to find a logical explanation for the impossible. Aviation specialists, psychologists, and safety investigators all looked at the facts, trying to piece together a rational reason for his survival. They all agreed on one thing: his seat location was crucial. Being in 11A, right next to an emergency exit, gave him a potential pathway out of the wreckage that others just didn't have. The fuselage may have broken apart near his seat, creating an opening that simply wasn't available to people in other sections of the plane. But a good seat alone doesn't guarantee survival. This led experts to a second theory: his psychological response. Most people, when faced with a sudden, life-threatening crisis, freeze. Our brains get overwhelmed by fear and we're just unable to act. But a very small percentage of people, estimated to be just 0.01%, enter what's called action mode. Instead of panicking, their minds become incredibly focused. They're able to make quick, decisive choices. Did Vishwas, in those critical seconds, unbuckle his seatbelt and move toward an exit without even thinking? It's possible he acted on pure instinct. A third factor was his physical condition. To survive a plane crash, you have to be able to withstand the incredible forces of the impact. Then you have to endure the heat, the smoke, and the fumes, and if you're lucky enough to make it through all of that, you might still need the physical strength to move wreckage and clear a path to safety. Vishwas was a healthy 39-year-old man. His physical fitness probably played a role in his ability to survive the initial crash and the chaotic aftermath. He was strong enough to endure what so many others could not. However, after all the scientific analysis, the experts always came back to one simple, powerful word: luck. Even with the perfect seat, the right mindset, and good physical health, survival was incredibly unlikely. No one on the trained flight crew who knew exactly what to do in an emergency made it out alive. This fact really highlights the enormous role that pure random chance played. Vishwas Kumar was in the right place at the right time with the right instincts. It was a perfect storm of improbable events. For the scientists, it was a statistical anomaly, and for the rest of the world, it looked a lot like a miracle. Imagine being Vishwas Kumar. One moment you're on a plane heading home, the next you wake up in a hospital, the sole survivor of a catastrophe. How do you even begin to make sense of it? The shock would be overwhelming. The world as you knew it has been turned upside down. The simple act of closing your eyes might bring back terrifying flashes of memory, the blast, the fall. Your own survival would feel like a dream, something that just couldn't possibly be real. You'd touch your own face, your own arms, just to make sure you were still there. Then comes the grief. It would arrive like a tidal wave. Grief for the 240 strangers who shared your final moments on that plane. Grief for the pilots and the flight attendants. And, most profoundly, a deep and personal grief for your brother, Ajay. This grief would be tangled up with guilt. Why did I live? Why was I spared? You might replay every moment in your mind, searching for a reason, an explanation that makes sense of the senseless. You might wonder if you did something different, something that sealed your fate while others met theirs. But alongside the shock and the grief, another feeling might begin to grow. A sense of wonder. You would have to ask yourself the big questions. Was this fate? Was my life saved for a reason? Did God reach down and pull me from the fire? For a person who has walked through the valley of the shadow of death and come out on the other side, life can never look the same again. Every sunrise, every breath, every conversation with a loved one would feel like a gift. You would have a second chance at life, a chance that was denied to so many others. This is the journey that Vishwas Kumar now faces. It's a journey of healing, not just for his body, but for his soul. He has to learn to live with the memory of what happened and with the miracle of his survival. He has to find a way to carry the weight of his loss while embracing the gift of his future. His story is a powerful reminder that even in our darkest moments, there can be hope. His survival forces us all to have a conversation with destiny, to ask ourselves what we would do if we were given a second chance at life. In the end, the story of Vishwas Kumar and Seat 11A leaves us standing before a great unanswered question. What saved him? Was it simple luck, a one-in-a-million statistical fluke where all the variables of physics and chance lined up in his favor? Was it his quick-thinking mind and his physical strength, a testament to the power of the human will to survive? Or was it something more? Was it fate, a path that was written for him long ago? Was it a miracle, an act of divine grace from a power beyond our understanding? And we may never have a definitive answer. The experts can give us their theories, the statistics can show us the probabilities, but they just can't explain the feeling that this was something special. They can't explain why out of 242 people, one man was chosen. This mystery is perhaps the most important part of the story. It forces us to look beyond our everyday understanding of the world. It makes us consider the possibility that there are forces at play that we cannot see or measure, forces that connect us in ways we do not comprehend. The world will remember the Ahmedabad crash as a great tragedy. So many lives were lost and so many families were left broken-hearted, but it will also be remembered for the miracle of Vishwas Kumar. His story does not erase the pain of the loss, but it adds a chapter of hope and wonder. It reminds us that life is incredibly fragile, but it's also incredibly resilient. It shows us that even in the face of overwhelming darkness, a single light can shine through, giving us a reason to believe in the impossible. Perhaps the point is not to find the answer. Perhaps the point is to live with the question. The story of the man who fell from the sky and lived is a story that belongs to all of us now. It is a modern-day fable that asks us to think about how we live our own lives. Are we grateful for each day? Do we cherish the people we love? Do we live with a sense of wonder? Vishwas Kumar was given the gift of more time. His survival is a quiet invitation for all of us to appreciate the time we have and to never stop looking for the miracles that hide in plain sight.